Ladies, what's the weirdest fetish a guy has dropped on you all of a sudden with little to no warning? Were you with it or against it? Scat. A guy wanted to watch me take a crap. Cool. Pull up a seat and try to figure out if I've met my recommended daily allowance of fiber. But during he asked if he could get a plate for me to crap on, instead of in the toilet. I'm very open-minded, but had to decline. He was cute, but not crap on a plate cute. He was cute, but not crap on a plate cute. Our brand new sentence. This will probably be buried, but a guy I met on a dating app just started choking me, hard and with no warning, in the middle of sex. Decided during sex, with no pre-discussion or safe word, was the appropriate time to tell me that he liked choking girls until they were unconscious. He liked them waking up not knowing what's going on, being fricked really hard. Needless to say, this was horrifying. I was not okay with it, and he ruined sexual choking for me entirely, which I used to like. Not as hard as that or to the point of passing out though. Huge bummer all around. Would not recommend this strategy if you want this from a sexual partner. I'm a guy. I've passed out from being choked as a kid messing around before. It is not fun to come out of. You feel numb and in a daze and very scared. Frick that crap. I would never do that to anyone, unless they were into it. There's an Updoot question about how wild you'll get, and I'm convinced that 99.9% of the people that say they'll try anything once have no idea what kind of crap some people do. They should probably read these answers. I met this guy and he was just a fling for a while. I knew he was into anal kinky stuff and I'll try anything once, but I eventually moved out of state, but we would still talk all the time and Skype. We'd fool around on Skype and send each other dirty pics and we became real comfortable with each other. One day he said he had a confession that when he watched pee his favorite part was the CM shot. I didn't think anything of it, I figured guys were into that. Well, one day on Skype he told me that he liked the taste of his own CM, and that he liked to CM in his own mouth. Being completely fascinated by people, I of course asked how that was possible. Did he like shoot it up in the air and catch it? He said, want me to show you now? I don't think that if we were in the same room I would have been able to handle what was about to happen, but I truly think he had some homosexual tendencies but was too scared to tell anyone. Maybe because he was a police officer. I'm not sure, but he was sweet and a good guy, so I was like, what the heck? You only live once, right? So I said, sure, knock yourself out. So he proceeds to jerk off and then right before he comes he completely flips upside down on the couch with his legs in the air and his dong pointed down, comes, and it drips down into his mouth. It's legitimately the craziest thing I have ever seen, but he told me how happy they made him and how he's always been so nervous about revealing that to anyone. So I was happy to help. He wanted to paint my toenails, then ejaculate on them. I was down as long as I approved the color. He did a great job. Even put little hearts on the big toes and gave me a foot rub. It didn't do much for me sexually, but I got a pedicure and we had fun. Oh, wholesome. I have been dating this man for 2 years that I met on POF. About 6 months in, he told me he had a balloon fetish. He said he had been jacking off with them since he was a teen, and his fantasy was to have actual sex on one. He said he had always been afraid to tell anyone, but he sensed that I would be the type of person who wouldn't run away. At first I was like OMG, but then I was like frick it, what's the harm in trying something new? So he brings out this huge 6-foot long balloon that he has to blow up with an air pump. The thing is huge, and he tells me he owns a ton of them, all shapes and sizes. At first it was weird trying to straddle that humongous balloon and leaning over it so he could frick me doggy style on it, all the while being terrified that it was going to pop in my face at any given moment. But I got used to it and we do it often. It has popped in my face quite a few times and we both get a good laugh. I figure if it makes him happy then why not? Also, if anybody has any suggestions on new things to try with the balloons, let me know. You know, this one isn't bad at all. No bestiality, no scat waterworks, just different. I had been seeing this gal who was shamed sexually for the smallest things by her ex-fiance, like the fact that she couldn't hold in squirting. We talked extensively about stuff I was into, but she was really cautious given her past experiences. One night I had slept over, and in the morning when I woke up I found a pair of her freshly laundered panties strewn over my backpack with a note telling me to take them home with me and I'd receive further instructions via text. Just as it gets to the night before I see her next, I get this long line of texts from her dancing around what she wanted, and then finally she got to the point and said, "You know, I have a thing for CM. So I want you to make a video of yourself cooming on my panties. Afterwards put them in a Ziploc bag and bring them down tomorrow night with you." I'm thinking, okay, I'm a little weirded out that I'm carrying her panties around. Dunno why, but I just felt weird about it, but decided I was game. Went to her house the next night and we went out to dinner. After getting back to her place she dropped her pants and proudly showed me she was wearing said panties to dinner. I know it sounds like a really tame thing, and I get that sense of some people like an ownership thing when it comes to sex, but it was something so out of the blue and as kinky as I thought I was. It was something wholly new to me. I can't tell if this was a happy or scary moment for you. Once had a hookup try to randomly fist me with zero warning. I was not okay with that. My junk hurt for almost a week. That just makes no sense to me that someone would assume it's okay to just go ahead and put your whole fist into someone else's body with no consent. Likes having a girl sit on his face, their acid and fart. The smellier the better. Another guy said in order to date him, I'd have to be okay with him pee on my face. Would find it especially hot if I drank some of it in the process. One night stand. Call me Captain. I laughed. He left. Not immensely weird but funny. Hope I didn't give him a complex or something about it. Poor dude. Everyone knows if you do that, you should go with call me Ishmael, and then you gotta go harder and say from Hex Heart, I stab a bee. Give her the Moby Dong. Dated this dude about 11 years ago. We'd only been going out for about 2 weeks when he brought up that he wanted me to eat grapes out of his butt. He was a pretty big mama's boy, which was already giving me some red flags, and then to spring that comment on me, I pretty much asked if we could see other people. What? I dated a guy that was into virgin roleplay. He also believed he had a huge enough dong to make anyone bleed, virgin or not. When I didn't bleed after we had some rough sex, I'm totally cool with rough sex. He got pissy. He said I should have bleed because I was tight enough, but I guess he didn't realize that vaginas are super elastic. He was convinced I had cheated on him before we had sex that day. It was really weird. I'm all for pretending to be a curious virgin, but I can't make my imaginary hymen pop and bleed, dude. I still laugh about it to this day. And not everyone bleeds the first time they have sex anyway. At a party, I had a girl straight up ask me if she could hold my dong while I took a leak. I said why not, then I got bladder shy and disappointed her. Feels bad, man. My ex had a dog-shaped penis dildo that they bought from Bad Dragon. They had used it on me once and asked if I liked it. I said yes. They then proceeded to tell me in detail graphically that if I liked this, just imagine what a real dog would feel like. That we needed to buy a big breed of dog, like a mastiff or a golden retriever, so that I could have sex with the dog and they could watch. That it would turn them on so much knowing our family dog was secretly fricking me behind closed doors. I was absolutely horrified. The relationship only lasted 4 months and it still makes me sick thinking about it. Guy told me he likes tall women. Really tall women. Wanted me to dress up and play at being a giantess. We were halfway through our first cup of coffee. Lucky you weren't drinking espresso from a tiny cup, or he may have nutted right then. Knife stuff. No warning at all. I knew he was kinky and slightly weird, but not, like, dangerously weird until he was having difficulty reaching orgasm. I said something along the lines of how can I help you finish, and he slides a fake magician's knife out of the nightstand next to him and said he had a stabbing fetish. Wanted me to pretend to be murdered by him. It was a nuclear red flag, but there I was. He's already inside me, so I'm like whatever, I'll go along with this. He came. I left. The next day my abdomen was totally beat the frick up. Bruises all over my torso and chest from him jamming a stupid plastic knife into me. It opened my eyes to how sexual stabbing scenes are in horror films, as he explained that's where the fetish began. from growing up watching crap like Halloween. Never again though, shudders. I grew up watching horror movies and it gave me a not wanting to be stabbed fetish. Not me, but a friend of mine was talking to this guy who said, before we go any further, I need to come clean about something. Please don't think I'm strange. I've got a really weird fetish. Instantly we think it's gonna be something extreme. Maybe involving bodily fluids. I don't want to kink shame, but just something downright gross. He says, I need to be wearing a fleece. Patagonia was his preference. It's like innocent compared to the ones in this thread, but just bizarre. Yeah baby, take me in your Subaru and tell me about your rock climbing trip. I had a friend who came across a fella with what he called a consensual procedures fetish, as in he liked to put on medical gloves and give girls examinations. She said it actually wasn't that bad because he knew so much about the female anatomy he could actually find her clitoris. I've got one. First serious relationship. I already knew he was into goth alternative girls and big boobs. Pretty standard. Then he slowly reveals he's into being dominated, blindfolding, teasing, light choking, and also catgirls, and girls with other animal features like cowgirls with 6 boobs. I thought he'd told me everything until one night he tells me his biggest secret is his biggest fetish and nobody knows. He keeps hinting at things and saying stuff like it can only happen at certain times, and I think he's going to say he's into periods or something. Then he reveals he's massively and uncontrollably into pregnant women. Especially tiny girls but with enormous overinflated boobs and bellies. Plus this was stacked on top of the other fetishes, so cue him asking me to tie him up whilst wearing a collar, huge furry tail and the biggest food baby I could manage. He even asked me if I'd consider inflating myself with air. Note out of there. It can only happen at certain times. Considering where this started from, I was expecting this to be like werewolf furry sex play. I'm a dom, so I've seen a ton of weird crap. One guy wanted me to brand him, like with a hot iron. A couple of guys were interested in serious damage to their genitalia. One wanted to be held underwater. Needless to say, I don't do things that can cause permanent damage or death. Right after I found his stash of dildos under his bed, he asked if he could pee inside me. Was seeing a lawyer while I was in college and he was into dong shaming and a chastity cage. I really liked him, so I indulged him some. Kept his little dong cage keys on my keyring. The whole shebang. But he could not separate fetish and life. So our whole relationship turned into fetish instead of an actual relationship. I had a friend who told me some Tinder dude brought a backpack of fetish gear to their first date and was surprised that she found it weird. I have to have my tools. Not sure if this counts, but I worked as a pro dominatrix for a couple years and my ex-girlfriend and I would often do duos together as it was a nice way of spending time together making money, and we had great chemistry together as doms. Years later she is still a dear friend. She hits me up letting me know she has a really well-off client who had a very specific breath play fetish. Since I was very experienced with breath play and felt very comfortable doing it safely, she asked if I'd be down to make a couple $100. I get to the dungeon, we smoke weed and wait for the guy. He comes in with a bunch of rolls of plastic. Turns out, he had a very specific fetish for this kind of plastic that was very smooth and soft. It wasn't only a breath play suffocation scene, but he wanted to be totally mummified and said plastic. I'd say he was in his late 50s, early 60s. Just looked like someone's dad. We spent 2 hours binding him in this plastic, putting plastic over his face until he'd scream his muffled safe word as he'd gasp for air, and then sitting on his mummified metapod looking body and smoke joints on top of him, tickle him, and then ignore him and talk amongst ourselves. It all looked like something straight out of a Dexter scene, and honestly it would probably look very creepy to an outsider. This cycle of mummifying him and suffocating him lasted for 2 hours, until he asked if we could cut him free. Then he jerked off for like 1 minute and blew his load all over the pile of plastic. Weirdly enough, nicest and most normal client I've had. During our aftercare session, this is where you encourage your sub, tell them how well they did, cuddle them, and check in with them so they're not traumatized by the scene. He spilled his guts to us. He said he felt out of control in his life and having his breath controlled and wrapped in the plastic made him feel safe and comforted him. Ha. My boyfriend likes people to watch him pee. Not peeing on people or things, just peeing in the toilet normally. It's weird, but honestly I'm into weirder. There was one guy who was really into having a free household, meaning, I guess, sex and nudity in front of the children. He was kind of vague about what he was suggesting, so I kept on trying to steer things back into the realm of sanity and be all, yeah, sexy times, nakedness, once the kids are in bed. But then he went into this elaborate fantasy about me showering with our teenage daughter, not actually ours. This was still in the realm of fantasy, and I was like, wait, you're actually getting off on the idea of the kids being involved, or at least witnessing all of this? And he was like, yeah, and I was like, I'm out. I don't have a ton of limits, but kids is one. He also kept calling me mommy, even after I asked him to stop. I actually have a child who is still young enough to call me mommy. If there is one guaranteed way to turn me off, that would be it. If I recall, he also referred to his dong as his frick stick. That would be a hard no. That is fricked up on so many levels. My guy was a tall, skinny, dorky but very cute and nice math professor with glasses, thin lips and disheveled hair. He looked like the stereotypical math nerd. We get to his place and he asks me to put my head under the couch while he fricks me doggy. Other requests, asking me to lick the bottom of his balls as he gently slaps my face around, and putting me into weird poses on his couch. Seems like he really likes that couch. When I was 18 I was really into photography. My main source of inspiration were those badass actresses from the past who happened to smoke or hold cigarettes on black and white photos. Think Audrey Hepburn, Anna Karina, Grace Kelly and the likes. I glammed up, took photos of myself and put them online. One guy really liked those photos, and I was glad someone got my art. He also liked old films, so we decided to go see one together. After the film, he offered me a cigarette and asked if I smoked. I said no. He then begged me to smoke one now and wanted to take photos of it and film it. It felt weird, but out of my naivety I didn't really think of anything. He got really turned on by this, and started moaning, and wanted me to blow cigarette smoke in his face. He then said that there's nothing hotter than kissing a girl after she's had a cigarette. At that point it was so weird that I came up with some excuse and left ASAP. He then wrote me that he has smoking fetish and gets off by girls smoking. I don't smoke nor do I like the smell of it, so that was that. Ain't gonna kill those lungs of mine for that. I was in a long-term relationship with a guy who was into feet and that was actually pretty fine. He did talk about it first, so didn't come as a surprise. Also, it was a good workout for my feet. Haha. I was in a long-term relationship with a guy who was into feet and that was actually pretty fine. Being with someone with a foot fetish is a gift, massages all the time, and he never complains about me buying new shoes. My best friend told me about how she had been dating this guy for a few months and they took a camping trip together. They were having sex in the tent and he puts his forearm down on her neck and starts cutting off her air supply. She freaked and thought he was going to kill her to later find out he had a choking fetish he never told her about. So there's breaking out the surprise choking fetish, and there's breaking out the surprise choking fetish in the middle of the woods where there's no one around. My boyfriend wanted me to dress him up like a girl, do his makeup and frick him with a strap on. I actually am quite into it as it turns out. Goddess bless you, woman. We perverts thank you. Was talking to a guy online on a dating site. One of those guys that seemed kind of too good to be true. Out of my league. Good looking. Great job. Owned his own home. Traveled nationally and internationally once a year on vacation. I figured there had to be a catch. He had a cuckold fetish. I'll give him this. At least he was honest about it early on rather than waiting until I was invested in a relationship. He was also very polite about it when I declined. I mean, go figure, a guy with a cuckold fetish wouldn't be sensitive to a woman bruising his ego. He demanded I call him daddy in the middle of sex. So build up. No hint he had a daddy kink. Just demanded it very loudly mid-thrust. I personally feel very uncomfortable with the daddy stuff in relation to sex. Hooray for the people who love it. I ain't one of them. I just moaned louder hoping that would suffice. But I didn't actually say it. Of course, the personal squick was on my mind and killed the mood a bit. I told him later that if he has certain sexual requests he needs to bring them up in advance so we can discuss them and not throw them at me in the middle of freaking. I told him daddy is not at all my jam, but offered some other things I could call him and asked what he would prefer. Turns out he was big on being called sir. Not me, but friend told me a story about one of her Tinder dates. Fairly boring, non-sexual first date convo. She gets up to go to the bathroom, and as soon as she sits back down dude is like, so how do you feel about pee play? Like would you pee on me? I guess her going to the bathroom was enough of a segue for this guy. I see you're fellow fan of peeing. Dude I was talking to a few years ago wanted me to call him daddy. That isn't the weird part, though I'm vehemently against calling my sexual partner daddy since I call my own father daddy. He also wanted me to act like a little kid. Also not the weird part. Daddy little girl play is a thing. Not my thing. But I try not to judge. The weird part that made me nope was how he continued a stream of comments about how amazing it would be if I was small like a little girl. That it would be so much better if I was completely hairless and had baby fat. It became increasingly apparent he didn't want to just fantasize about age play. He actually wanted a little girl. I ghosted him after that. Creeped me the frick out. I keep reading through these and getting a strong bad feeling that makes me want to downvote. Then I remember that that's what the whole thread is about. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.